kiss? Do you feel satisfied? What ice cream flavor makes your kisses so divine? I can be you now, and you can be me too. Chameleon lovers can't be wrong. Don't you waste your love on me today, just hold me closer. Maybe for a minute, just for now. Wait until the ashes wash away, we'll fall in love. Fall in love after Carnival.
Strangers in the city, drifting together. Another day to find a new paradise. Tell me a story of who you wanna be. We'll dance away into the sun. Every look begins with a disguise. Every possibility is in your eyes. Do you dream in colors? Do you feel satisfied? What ice cream flavor makes your kisses so divine? I can be you now, and you can be me too. Chameleon lovers can't be wrong. Don't you waste your love on me today, just hold me closer. Maybe for a minute, just for now. Wait until the ashes wash away, we'll fall in love. Fall in love after Carnival. Fall in love after Carnival.
All right, welcome everybody, humans and avatars alike. My name is Fabian Brown here at the Ropeadope Lounge, and I'm excited for you guys to join us here for a lively discussion about music of Brazil and its global influences. I'm here with a cast of absolutely rock stars here, and it started off joined with Mr. Scotty Hard. Scotty Hard is literally the Ropeadope OG, and there is no Ropeadope without his contributions to our very first record, presenting Project Logic. But his contributions to the entire industry go so much further. Scott has worked in several essential scenes, always favoring quality over hype. In hip-hop, he worked with Prince Paul, De La Soul, Fat Joe, Ladybug Mecca, and so many more. In the downtown jazz scene, he's worked with MMW, Sex Mob, DJ Logic, and again, more and more, on and on. And of course, it is his immersion in Brazilian music with Nação Zumbi and his persistent string of Brazilian musicians that brings him here today. Moving forward, we're joined with composer, drummer, and percussionist Stephane Sanjuans, globally celebrated for both his solo work and his work with musical titans including David Byrne, Caetano Veloso, Bernard Purdy, and so many more. We don't even have time to list them all. He contributed his gift on percussion to Alexia Bomtempo's latest Ropeadope release, Doce Carnival. We're also joined here today with guitarist, producer, and songwriter Alexandre Vaz. He made his first name with Brazilian hip-hop star Marcelo Deduz, and his work with a wide variety of artists, ranging from Jorge Ben and Seu Jorge to Aloe Black, and to the New York Philharmonic. He was one of the producers on Alexia's new release. And then again, we have guitarist, producer, and composer Jake Owen. Has a writing and playing style steeped in the earthy blues, folk, and Latin music traditions emanating from his native Texas roots. He has performed with a range of artists from the Dixie Chicks to One Direction, the Bodines to Pharaoh in the Dark. He has worked in the studio with top artists and has engineered and co-produced Alexia Bomtempo's album Suspiro and Dosi Carnival, which brings us to Miss Alexia Bomtempo. Is one of the persons that brings us all of these talented people together. She carefully blends her deep love of Brazilian music with the northern half of her artistic and personal roots. Described as an artist of multiple worlds, Alexia has a way of bringing style and people together in one world. And last but not least, I like to bring our attention to the virtual room, the Ropeadope Lounge, and introduce the self-proclaimed fake CEO of Ropeadope, Mr. Louis Marks. Louis, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right. All right. So two virtual worlds colliding here. It's really, I mean, welcome everybody. Just so absolutely amazing to get all these people together. I want to point out that we do have the Scotty Hard family crest on the wall here today. Hopefully you can see that. That's our sign of respect. Let's do one of these. Yeah. But thanks everybody for being here. What are we doing here? For those, we kind of got just a couple of us here in the room, but for those who are watching this on a live stream, what is happening in this room is something that we accidentally discovered. Everybody talks about VR, augmented reality, and goggles as if it's some sort of fake world. But when we got in here, we discovered it was actually something completely different. It was a new form of communication where we can connect people. And we quickly, and we're learning as we go, found a way to sort of bring everybody from their respective spaces into the room, and then have people actually talk to them, as opposed to the isolated Web 2.0 version of staring at your cell phone and scrolling through a website or watching videos by yourself. So what we hope this space will be is a space where people can actually come together, chat with each other, and sort of mend some of the distance that we found ourselves with after our Web 2 and of course our COVID experience, right? So we're trying to bring everybody together, and here we are. So just want to say welcome to everybody in the room and just check some of my tech stuff. Hey, how are you? Where do we want to start, everybody? We're here talking about Brazil today, right? And this is a subject that could take many, many hours. So I'm going to call this episode 1, and we're going to have some more. I was really excited to look at the Ropeadope roster and find that while we haven't released a lot of records, I'm sure there's much more music coming out of Brazil than we're even close to. But we do have some to our credit, and we have on the wall over here a Scotty Hard record from, I don't know, 2008 or 9, Econdio. And then, of course, Alexia's wonderful contributions and some others by Raimundo Sodre and Dende Macedo. So really excited to kick it off, and I have no questions. I would like each person to express what you would like to say about how you got here. How did you all come together, and how did you get to this music? So, Fabian, you want to pick someone and start it off?
You know what? I was going to save the best for last, but I can't resist. I have to call on Alexia. I've had, countless of conversations with Alexia over the years with her releases, and I'm just curious. Like Louis said, how do you assemble this amazing cast of individuals?
I don't know what kind of magic this is, but I was thinking about this today in preparation, just thinking about what we were going to do, and just posting the flyer again and promoting it, and just thinking about everybody involved and who's here. And I just thought it was so interesting to think about the power and the reach of Brazilian music, because here I am, a Brazilian American, who's an American. Then we have Alexandre, who's a true Brazilian. Then we have Stephane from France, Scotty from Canada, and all of you at Ropeadope here based in the States. So what an incredible form of art that just keeps on reaching so many different people from different backgrounds and different cultures. And we all come together to celebrate this. It's a very unique. But how did I get here? How did I bring all these people together? I think that I have to sort of blame it on New York because, you know, in New York, you just meet so many people from different parts of the world. And then I think I realized what I was just expressing about Brazilian music, how it touches so many souls. And here we are in this city where, you know, everybody from different countries also live, and we all came together.
Jake, what are your thoughts?
Is there a Brazilian section of New York, or is it just kind of people connecting in the studio or random places?
Our building.
There you go. Okay.
Well, no, you know, it's funny. There used to be like back like in the 80s and the 90s, Little Brazil. It actually still says that on Google Maps. It's like near Times Square, but it's, yeah, I think it's 44th or 46th Street, but it's not really legit. I think there used to be a bunch of Brazilian restaurants there, but now there's like one or two. So I know there are a lot of Brazilians in Astoria in Queens, but I think we're kind of everywhere. I see Brazilians everywhere in New York.
Sorry, does anyone have any kind of history on you know, when people migrated from Brazil to New York City and to the United States? Because I'm curious about that piece of history. Like, what's your personal history,
know this.
Alexia?
What was the question?
I think Lewis was trying to connect.
I was adding on there, and adding on. What is were you raised in the United States or were you raised in Brazil?
Both. I was born here, but I moved to Brazil when I was 7 years old. So I was very much raised in Brazil. But then I moved back to the States when I was 17. Then I went back to Brazil and and then it was just a lot of back and forth. I would say like my formative years were in Brazil.
You know,
Gotcha. I'm going to pass it to you, Fabian.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Lewis. Alexia, I'm curious again. You know, specifically when it comes to, you know, your artistic, you know, connections with some amazing people in the room. You know, how are those relationships formed? Were they friends and colleagues outside of music? You know, I'm just curious on how all of this has come together.
How we all got together here.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Well, I guess it goes way back. Alexandre and I actually met in Rio, back when I still lived there and he lived there. And I had just put a previous record out and we worked together, and he played guitar in my band and we did a bunch of shows. Actually, Alexandre, I mean, there is that story where we met back in the day when you were an actor and I was a child and I saw you play and I was a fan.
Wow, that you're going deep now. Well, that's I would say we met, but we didn't know we're gonna see each other again. You were a child, I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Working on a very successful play in Brazil. Or that was the early 90s actually.
Yeah.
Then we met again when you released your Caetano Only English Songs album. Just happened to be here, right? That's the name of the album.
Right.
And then I joined your band and we played a bunch of shows, and then we became friends.
Mm-hmm.
We started drinking together.
Shopi in Rio. Yeah.
Exactly. Sometimes too much drinks, maybe.
There's something to that social element that I think I find interesting, because I'm basically coming in completely from the outside. I moved to New York about a decade ago, and I was born in Central Texas and came up there. And I have native Hispanic culture that I'm used to, and it's very family and friends oriented. But I moved to New York, and to be honest with you, I don't even know if I remember meeting a Brazilian before I was 32 years old or so. There's just not a lot of Brazilians in Central Texas. There's a lot of Mexicanos, like I grew up around. But when it comes to something that I think is a really important element of Brazilian music, which is this connection, this deep, almost familial connection between musicians, especially percussionists, and that sense of community. I just got really lucky, and I landed in New York at a club called New Blue, which is just a breeding ground for meeting interesting musicians doing creative things. And that band, For Hole in the Dark, I just through an old friend of mine I met on tour, almost 20 years ago, got me subbing in that band and into that scene. And then I was lucky enough to meet Alexia within months of moving to New York. So in a way, I kind of won that New York lottery that everybody hoped for, to come to a city like this and to just have your mind blown. And I went from not even knowing the culture at all to being exposed to something that I related to on that level of love and community and people around the music and with the music, through the music. But here I am a decade later, and I've just had my mind blown by something that, now in what some would call middle age, that I see this beautiful culture that really the community is just as important as the people. And these people have all become not just musician collaborators, but very deep close friends of mine. And there's something about that in the music that I think is an intangible that is an important part of the music and contributes to it being what it is for me.
Beautiful. So from Rio to Texas to New York, that only leaves France and Canada. Scotty, I love to hear a little bit more about your connection with Alexia and just Brazilian culture and music in general. Oh, you're still muted, my friend. We love technology. When it works, it's great. When it doesn't work, it's always fun and entertaining.
Unmute. There it
Scott.
goes. Yeah, well, I think that I could kind of elaborate on what Jake said and in terms of just the inclusiveness and the warmth of Brazilian culture and the music that's such a big part of it. I mean, the thing that I was always touched by, when I first went to Brazil was how integral music is to people's lives there. And people sing, and people will be in a room together with their parents and their grandparents and their kids, and they'll all be dancing and singing to a Georgie Ben song or something. And it's something that don't experience much in America. I was born in Canada, but I've lived in New York for 32 years. So I've lived here longer than I ever was in Canada. But I first went down to Brazil on the insistence on Nassau Zumbi. I got an email one day that said, "Greetings from Recife." And I'm like, where the fuck is that? And I'm like, yeah, we want you to come and produce our record. And I'm like, well, yeah, all right, fine. Send me some records. And I didn't think about it. And a month later, like 5 records came in, and I was like, and he said, and don't listen to just listen to the newest one first. And I listened to a bit of that, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to go back. And I heard Dilema La Coisas. I heard their first record and was completely blown away. I'm like, what is this music? It's fucking incredible. And so I went down there and knew nothing about Brazilian music except for, the sort of cheesy samba shit that I learned in music school out of a fake book that you would play. And, and I just told them, I said, hey, I'm open. I don't know anything about this music. And the first weekend we had off, they took me to the fucking swap meet. And I just started buying records and like, buy this one. Oh, you don't have this? I said, I don't have anything. And so get this. And then next thing you know, I've got an armload of Milton Banana and Georgie Ben and Gilberto Gil and Caetano Veloso records and I just fell in love with the music. And it's kind of like what Jake said about winning the lottery. I kind of won the lottery there because I'm all of a sudden thrown into this music scene of one of the coolest bands on earth, really. And meeting all their friends and their people. And then, and that was in Sao Paulo, basically. And so I didn't have a lot of Rio connections until I went back to Brazil. I think for the third time I went back and I did a project at the Carnival in Bahia with Matthew Barney and Arto Lindsay. And at that point I met Cassine, who was kind of the friend to all of us, the sort of Brazilian super producer who so many people know. And through him I met Stephane, and we became friends in my few trips to Rio. And then he moved here and we started working together, and I met, and he brought me in on Suspiro and met Alexia and Jake, and just fell in love with both of them and the music, and just became it's so easy to be friends with people who are on this level of just inclusion and openness, and just their hearts are open always, so it's been a great to be make new friends and continue to do more projects with people and collaborating. So I mean, Brazil is some of my closest friends are Brazilian, and I have a goddaughter who's Brazilian, and so it really changed my life. And it's a true blessing that I was able to start learning about that part of the world.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
And Stephane, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So yeah, well, Scotty already told a lot of our connection through Cassine, who's an important figure in contemporary Brazilian music. In my case, I've always heard Brazilian music as a kid. Like my stepmother was a singer, so she would sing like jazz and bossa nova. So I heard many times. I even played when I was very young. I didn't have that much passion for it, I have to say, when I was younger. And at one point I moved to London, and I lived there for a few years. That's where I met Cassine on the session. And then he introduced me to a whole different side of Brazilian music. And I think the music you hear in Brazil, it's very different from Brazilian music you hear outside Brazil. So for me, it became like a huge difference. And I started to get involved with different artists there and band projects. So at one point I moved to Rio. I come from south of France, and I moved in Rio. Like I had a tour to do, and then I started to record there. And I went, like I said, I can go for a year or something. And then I ended up staying for 15 years. It was a great experience. I played with many different artists and situations. So at one point, I met Alexia. I was working with somebody, a friend we have in common called Daji, like an important figure in Brazilian music too. And then I met her again in Rio, even in New York, before I moved here. So there is a connection for Brazilians. You were asking earlier, Luis, that my connection for many years was before I moved in New York. It was New Blue. There's a club in his village called New Blue, where there is like a Brazilian sort of spot. So for many years I came to play in New York, living in Brazil, and then we will always do like an after gig at New Blue, you know, or maybe the next day. So that's where I met Alexia again, and then progressively after talking for a while with Jake, we started to create the Suspiro project, and then from that moment we never stopped working together. So it's been great.
This is fascinating, and I have a feeling that we're only just getting warmed up and started. I'm gonna bring it back to the virtual room with Louis to hear some of his thoughts about non-cheesy fake jazz music from Brazil. Anything but that. Scotty, you got really good on that, man.
I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued as to why, and I think Brazil and Brazilian music is very fortunate that the American distillation commercial machine didn't really latch on fully to Brazilian music. So you have that, the part that they did was turned into stereotype, and when you say cheesy, I think it's stereotypical. It's like it was packaged and sold to an American audience, and that's probably why we don't know anything else. But it feels like maybe in a way the Brazilian culture dodged a bullet from that machine by not being fully embraced. And you know, we're a colonial nation, and we go and take things and make them into products for sale to people. In you know, the term world music alone is an example of that. It's like there's our music and then there's world music, which is, you know, sort of seen. Now they've changed it to global, which doesn't seem to be much different. But I think the interesting connecting piece that just about everyone mentioned is New Blue, and how important is that to have a cultural center. I mean, New Blue is not a club. New Blue is a cultural center. It's a place where people from all over the world come together and meet and perform. You've all pretty much testified to that, and so kudos to Ilhan. Is Ilhan the founder of New Blue?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, kudos to him.
It's an interesting thing, you know. Funny enough, my experience, New Blue was one of the first venues I played when I got here. But my connection came through playing with actually Danish artists at South by Southwest the year before I came to New York. And so I came into New Blue on a Danish night. There was a Danish showcase, like a Danish, I guess I would call it pop, but like a very female forward bill. It was amazing. And I was running tracks and playing guitar for this Danish artist. And then we met a mutual friend. I met a guy who happened to sit next to Alexia on a flight, and then I worked from there. So New Blue's that kind of thing where any given night there, I mean, it's a smorgasbord. It's absolutely incredible. Like I said, it's that thing that you want to have your mind blown. You go there on the right night and you see amazing music from some corner of the world who you may never see it again. You know, it's a fleeting thing, and you have to check in. It requires maintenance, you know, because you need to go be a part of it. But you can find
and you need to get there at 1 a.m.
Yeah, that was the thing too. Yeah.
You have to know that you're getting there at 1 and you're not leaving until like 5, maybe. I mean, this can go on like through the night.
And that was a big part of our event, like especially when we first got here.
That's how we met. Through New Blue.
And that's the thing. It is incredible. A culture. You know, you gotta be willing to, you know, go play and maybe not make a bunch of money, but then if you stick around, you'll meet some people, you'll see something that'll blow your mind, and then, oh, I want to talk to this person, I want to do something with this person and whatnot. And to me, that's the kind of thing that it's old school. That's what I grew up with, you know, meeting people in a club context and a bandstand, to use in dating context. But not that there's any, I mean, there's amazing kids on YouTube now learning things very quickly, which is great. But nothing substitutes that face-to-face meeting and seeing people, I think. in a situation like that. So New Blue definitely gets a lot of credit for everybody you see here in this film.
Well, I mean, I brought it up because that's, it's kind of what Ropeadope is, or tries to be, in a certain way. And it's what this is about. It has the opportunity to be a meeting place for different people. Maybe not, certainly no substitute for meeting in person, but it seems to me that those cultural connections, those random events where people meet each other, these places need to be venerated and kept alive to continue to facilitate this. And the interesting part is, it's the exact opposite of homogenization.
Yeah.
So the marketing machine markets and homogenizes, but these places just pop up. And there are dozens, there are hundreds, from CBGB. Knitting Factory is another. I'll reference Scott Harding on this one. That's, it was just random encounters down there that created this whole record label, and so, kudos to Ilhan and New Blue for doing that. And I think that this is a really important piece going forward, to try to continue to preserve cultural spaces in a, I don't know, not necessarily a non-commercial way. Nobody's saying we don't want to get paid, but certainly in a non product way, in a meeting place. So, but that's my soapbox. I'll let it move on, Mr. Brown.
Well, Louis, I'm curious if we are able to play any music from this album to kind of get the vibe, and then we can maybe come out of that and talk a little bit about the culture of Brazil and how it relates to this record.
I can. I have a video that I can bring up from.
That's great.
Doce Carnival. Yeah.
That's great.
Shall we watch that? All right. Bear with me a second, folks. I'll be staring at the ceiling because my headset has to come off.
Alexia, maybe as Louis does the tech background, maybe share a little bit about the video that we're going to watch.
Yes, we're playing Banho de Cheiro, right?
That is correct.
Cool. So this was the first single off the new record, Doce Carnival. And this is a track that features Roberta Sá, who's an incredible singer based in Rio and also a good friend. And we've known each other for a very long time. We met because we took voice lessons with the same vocal coach back in the day in Rio. And then we became good friends, and she's just had such a beautiful career developed since then. And I've always wanted to do something with her. And then when we started doing this record, Alexandre had the idea of recording this song, which is a very famous frevo type song from Brazilian Carnival. It's very fast. Alexandre, if you want to talk a little bit about the song, like the original, and how you had the idea of bringing this back into like that bossa nova vibe. I remember when you played it for me, like the version that you had on the guitar, I was like, wow, how did you think of that? I was so moved by it.
Well, this is a very popular song, became popular in the 80s with a famous singer called Elba Ramalho, which is an amazing singer. And it was a very Carnival, Northeast Carnival. Frevo is a kind of rhythm. Very, Stephane can go deep on the story of Frevo if he knows some deep stories from Frevo, which is amazing. And then when we start with the idea of the Doce Carnival, which is a homage to the Carnival, but not in a super, how could I say, like a normal way. It's like it's for us, something for Alex especially. I thought about changing completely that song because I think maybe this could be super slow, which is the opposite how the song is. And then I start playing with my acoustic, and then I said, oh, maybe there's something we can do with that. And then I showed Alex, and she was, whoa, that's so cool. Let's try that. And then I don't know if you guys know, heard already, Roberta Sá. She's an amazing singer. And she was here, I played with her here on Joe's Pub. And we hang out with Alexia. We went to a Seu Jorge show, Blue Note.
Yeah, that's right. And I think we drank like 2 bottles of wine before we went to the show. And then we had like a bottle of wine at the show. And then we had like 5 beers with Seu Jorge after the show. So
that's why I don't remember the show.
I don't remember exactly what happened after that, but I know that we ended up having pizza at Joe's after that, like standing in the street, the 3 of us sharing like a huge pizza box. I don't think I ever told you this. It was pretty hilarious. We were like 20 again. It was like, wow, okay.
I remember that too. I remember drinking Chablis in the beginning. Am I right?
It started out very classy, like oysters and Chablis, like super classy.
It was a Roberta thing. I remember. Oh, anyway, so if you listen to the original, I think I don't know if you can do that over here. I think it's very interesting to listen to the original Elba Ramalho version and listen to our version of the Dos Carnaval album. But let's see the video. It's in Rio, right? Okay. Let's talk about the video a little bit.
Yeah, so the video, we shot it in Santa Teresa, which is this very bohemian neighborhood in the hilltops of Rio. And they have a lot of Carnival parades, and it's very traditional. Actually, Stephane used to live in Santa Teresa in Rio.
I lived there for 12 years. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I feel like you should be the one talking about Santa Teresa. I've been there many times, and this is where we shot the video. And, you know, Cadu Fávero and Fabrício Tadeu, who are 2 incredible directors in the film industry in Brazil. They had the concept for the video together, and they directed it. And we were in this empty house with this incredible view and just walking around the streets. And it's just, you know, it's about female friendship.
Mm.
Oh, well, with that, Louis, the room is yours.
reminds more of the some going out with costumes, improvised costumes, and with some drums, drink a lot of beer and cachaça, and sing like traditional songs of this type of carnival. But in Rio, you also have the official carnival, and that's like sport. It's like baseball here, or the way it's organized and the way it happens. It's a strange mixture between a sport event and a music event. And each samba school, it's about 5,000 people going together with different sort of costumes, singing the same song for 120 minutes.
What?
It's with like the 300 drummers and you know, everything, like big cars. You've seen it. And people who do that, they actually do that traditionally to like it's like a prayer, at the same time a liberation, because historically Carnival was like 4 to 5 days, 3 days for the slaves to do whatever they wanted to do. That's where it comes from. You were asking historically. It's basically during that week, all the African slaves, that they could do whatever they wanted to do. You know, that's where it comes from. So for the black people in Brazil, it's very, very important. And for the Brazilian in general, but there is something about the Afro-Brazilian community and related to Carnival, which is very strong, and it's mixed up with Afro-Brazilian religion, like candomblé is very, very, very important in Brazil. So it's a way of expressing all those forbidden things historically.
I mean, I'm almost speechless. You know, the level of ignorance I have on the history and the significance. I mean, you said it's religious. That's the word that you used. You know, I would love to hear anyone else's thoughts on Carnival and how it's impacted, you know, or affected their life, and how it's a part of their culture, your culture.
Well, it's I feel like it's the most democratic sort of party that you can imagine. It's when the whole country comes together and nothing else matters. You know, I feel like the only places where this really happens in Brazil and in Rio specifically, because that's where I've spent most of my carnivals, were always like in Rio, which is where I grew up. And I feel like because Rio is such a complex city when it comes to all the social and economic problems and just cultural divisions, and you know, you have such a huge gap between the rich and the poor, and everything is so in your face, where the only times or places when nothing matters and everything's like the same and equal is like either at the beach, because that's a space for everybody, you know, or during Carnival, you know, everybody's there for that and everybody's together. So that's how I've always felt it, you know, as this very like just inclusive moment in time, you know, where I've had many great experiences, many memorable experiences. And part of the reason why we wanted to make this record was it's just truly like embedded into those memories. So I feel like, you know, since you're a kid, you go to the parties, you dress up. It's kind of like Halloween here, where kids dress up. When in Brazil, when you're a kid, you pick something, you dress up for Carnival. So it goes way back into your childhood, and that's how it was for me. But I wonder for Alexandre probably has something to share about Carnival and also growing up in Rio and how it affected your life.
Well, it's kind of same feeling that you. It's more like Rio Carnival, but also I think it's interesting to add to, besides the samba schools that Stephane mentioned and he played, that's the international people know about, the world know about, and also the block was in Rio. And, so many other rhythms of Carnival happen all over Brazil. There's so many different kind of carnivals. If you go to Northeast, it's different. And also, I find it's interesting the level of musicianship, because you have like the professional carnival players and samba schools and whatever, some professional blockers, and you have also the anybody can play some, you know. So you have also this very, I don't know how it's a natural, or it's just non-judgmental, let's say like this. I mean, so you have these days you have all kinds of stuff. People have only Beatles in samba rhythm, whatever it is, right? Well, other kind of stuff people are inventing, and I don't know. Probably there is a Madonna block. Yeah, people invent everything.
Sargento Pimenta is what the block is called.
Sargento Pimenta is like Sgt. Pepper's in Portuguese. So you have all this kind of stuff that it's new in the last 20 years or so, you know. Stephane was part of Orquestra Imperial, which is like a kind of a carnival, right, band, which is non-traditional carnival stuff. The way they played was also non-traditional. It was, you can talk, Stephane, you could say more about that stuff too.
Yeah, Orquestra Imperial, it was like a whole bunch of artists from Rio doing like samba gafieira sort of style of music, like this style of orchestra that we're playing in the 60s up to 70s in like a Brazilian big band. But our one was very informal, and then we used to do big bailes, big balls before Carnival. So Carnival, it depends on the states, like where we were, like Alexandre was saying. But in most of Brazil, Carnival starts a month before Carnival in Brazil, right? You have the pre-Carnival thing. And also all those samba schools from many different states, they start rehearsing from September. So it's like a long commitment thing. And with Orquestra Imperial, we used to do every week fancy dress balls fancy dress on stage and in the audience. And it was about like Circo Voador. That's a very important venue in Rio. Was about, I don't know, capacity. What is it, 2,000 or 3,000?
Yeah, I think 2,500.
Yeah, something like that. So we used to pack this for years. Every summer we will start 2 months before Carnival, and it will be like unexpected people singing samba, like people from rock bands and TV novela. The spirit is happiness. You know, the spirit of Carnival is really celebrating happiness, doing whatever makes you feel happy. There's also
children balls too, Carnival children balls too. People go there, little kids, and dance Carnival, like little bands playing on the streets too. Even in Circo Voador, they used to have one. I don't know if they still have it. Probably they do.
And I'll bring this back to guys like Jake and Scotty, who, you know, didn't grow up or were immersed in the culture of Brazil. You know, I'm sure you have a perspective.
Well, I was gonna say that the idea, it's kind of like Mardi Gras, you know, where that starts weeks before it really happens. You know, like the cool shit is the shit that happens before. And Stephane's mentor was this world's greatest samba drummer, Wilson das Neves. It was just a joy to see this guy play. It was amazing. And he was the sort of, what was he, Stephane, like the sort of musical director emeritus, kind of a Imperio Serrano. He had something to do with And
He
and
always, he was always involved in, but not too close. He never wanted any title, even though he played in the drums, tambourine for like 20 years, no, for 40 years. And he was like a drum director for 1 year, I think. But he was always involved, yeah.
Yeah, and you were involved in that. It's a samba school, and he's like, "Yeah, come with me." And so we drove out to the suburbs of Rio to go to this like rehearsal. But I had been to Carnival the year before in Bahia doing that project with Ardo, and so I knew about Carnival and what people did on the street and dancing and getting beers and hanging out and just dancing along to the side the thing or following the group. And they went through the neighborhood, and it was like a mini carnival. Like this was like a week or two before Carnival was actually happening. And they have a sort of theme song, or it's correct me if I'm wrong, but I think every samba school they commission a song, and then there's kind of like a song competition, and there emerges these songs that are kind of the song of that year. And that was what this is kind of this record brings it back, right around to that. That's what this record is these Carnival songs, these sort of songs that won like the American Idol or whatever. Like they played me the originals. They're these hyped up like things, and like hearing what these guys did with the music and the way they arranged it. I'm like, this is brilliant. Like doing an ambient version of these raving songs and really slow.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, for me, it's always a pleasure to work on a project that was like, oh, these guys have a concept. This is fucking cool. And they did it really well. And it's like, so therefore, the Carnival is a very sort of integral thing, and it just takes over everything. Like, it's bizarre, except in Sao Paulo. People sell their holiday hours so that their vacation time during Carnival, they'll sell it to someone else. If you can imagine that.
Yeah,
capitalism.
That's always what it becomes, right? I mean, I think for myself, part of the interesting part, especially thinking about Scotty's contribution to all this, is Suspiro is a very different record. If you look back to Alexia's last record, it's a bit more of a classic sounding, timeless style record. Very refined acoustic instruments and intimate vocals. And so I do think it's interesting that we're talking about the complete opposite of that. We're talking about, drunk party, like this almost hedonistic vibe of happiness and whatever feels good, right? Yet to me, especially as someone, I think I'm the only one of the group who hasn't been to Carnival. I've been to Brazil a bunch of times, and in Texas we have Fiesta in Central Texas, which is more, it's the Hispanic version that's a little more tied into Catholicism, Christianity, but it's dwarfed by, it is there's a kind of a comparison to Mardi Gras or whatever, which is at one time was the biggest celebration of that type in the States, but still this Carnival dwarfs that, but I at least have an idea of what that is. So to think and hear about all of these stories that my dearest friends have told me, and then we go and take that spirit and take almost the Suspiro aesthetic and make a thing that it is. It's a record that is very intimate. There's a lot of very close sounds on this record. You can hear, Alex plays nylon string on all the nylon string on this record, and you can really hear his fingers and what they do, harkening back to the bossa nova tradition and American jazz, kind of looking with that mindset, an acoustic record. Yet with this record, we did expand it with some ambient sound, some drum programming, some low percussion, and some really interesting things that again combined to make this interesting world that for me was such a cool challenge to work on. And then obviously Scotty just took it to a next level and really you know, nobody gets low end like Scotty does. You know, he can, you know, he takes this 808 approach to like a frame drum or like a low.
I like big butts, and I cannot lie.
Exactly. So I mean, it really was, considering this was a pandemic record that was supposed to be just an EP that we were recording all in isolation, and ended up being a full-length record, and with all these guests from all over the world, and how it ended up, I'm blown away. You know, like production-wise, this was an absolute challenge, but a real joy. And how it all came together and combines all these elements that we've been talking about. It's kind of mind-blowing.
You know, it really is a treat.
Well, you did have all.
Go ahead, Lewis. Go ahead, Lewis.
You did have all this talent. You did have all this talent. So,
that's never that always helps.
Alexia, yeah, you had all this talent, and it's for all of you. But it's really interesting because pandemic records are going to be a kind of a comment, like in the future. Like, oh, it was a pandemic record. And I think that right now it's sort of, well, we could only do what we could do because of the pandemic. But I think in the future, people are going to look back and say, yeah, it was a pandemic record. It was really soul-searching and self-reflective and deep, because that's, I think, the space that everybody got into with the whole process. I think these will be some of the most interesting records made.
I just wanted to say it was a real treat listening to all of you share your perspective on, well, not only the essence and the creation of this album, but the history of Carnival and how it relates to the production and the thought process that you put into recreating and reimagining these songs. I mean, I got a little bit of a shock, and it makes me really want to go back into the record and listen to it from this perspective that you guys shared here today. That's
cool.
Yes.
Cool. No, I said very, very cool. Nice to talk with you guys.
You should Google the names of the songs in YouTube and listen to the originals, because it'll fucking blow your mind. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I mean, I was just like, you know, you really have to hear that to really appreciate where they took the songs to another place altogether. And I get, you know, I don't speak Portuguese well enough to know most of the lyrics, but it would seem that it kind of puts a different, the texture of the music sort of gives it a different the meaning of the words a different context as well.
I would say would be nice, actually, something that we didn't think about, for
make
people
a playlist.
Yeah, exactly, like a playlist with the album and the
together.
original ones, so people can, you know, do this connection that Scotty is mentioning, you know?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great idea. And I wanted to add that all of these songs are very well known in Brazil. So I did have a lot of Brazilian fans reach out and tell me what their perspective was and how surprised and moved they were, you know, by just listening to this new take on these songs, and how some people just, they listened to the words and they understood the words in a completely different way that they never had before. So that was some really interesting and really cool feedback that we got.
There was people singing along to these songs at the Joe's Pub gig. People in the audience were singing along to a song they knew, but they'd never heard that arrangement. But the melody was there and they sang along. It was fucking incredible.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and that's it. And I would like to say too, the choices was just something that songs that Alexia really felt something special about, you know? That was important too, for us.
Yeah, choosing the repertoire was like this very sentimental sort of process, you know. It wasn't, because if we wanted to do like, okay, we're gonna do like a Carnival record, we'd have to make like 25 records, you know, like how do you do that, you know? So that was one thing that I had in mind. I was like, you know, I don't want people to think that this is like supposed to be this thing that it's not. So I was very upfront with just how this came together, and it was, you know, like Lewis said, a pandemic record where we were all just kind of reflecting on things and thinking about things and remembering things. And that's how the idea came together. And yeah, very, very sentimental, very, very private in a way, but also so relatable because so many people can relate to these songs as well. And it brings them to good places too.
Well, it's what, what music does best oftentimes is to heal wounds and to make people feel included into some kind of, shared experience that, that comes from that. And and that's what music does so well. And it's touched our lives so much. And that we want to continue to do that, to make music that makes people feel things and stuff. So it's a great component of this record.
Absolutely fascinating, and such a driver for me personally to not only revisit the album, Alexia, but to revisit the original versions of these, like Scotty is mentioning, go back,
hey guys,
dig.
That bit.
we have an audience member there.
Can you guys hear me? Hey, is that Lewis? Yeah, it is. Hey, Lewis, my name's Joshua Griffler, fellow Penthouse owner. We met briefly on your last one. I think over there is my boy Bit. Good to see you. That's not Bit. Okay.
So interesting, right, guys? So this is a common thing inside of this metaverse. Individuals, different owners of different penthouses and spaces coming in and connecting and talking.
Yeah, man. Come on over here.
And as they go off and chat. Well, like I was saying, you guys really giving me the ambition and drive to really reflect, going back, not just listening to your, yeah, I know, right, Alexia? Not just to listen to your version.
Sorry, I'm just like, whoa, where are they going? What are they talking about?
Yeah, when we had to give you the tour because this virtual space here, like the little snapshot that you're seeing, it's a tenth of the room and a tenth of this space. It's really something special. It's unique, and I'm just really excited that you guys took the time today to share the space together with us, and to share your stories and your perspective of how you guys connected, how you guys met, and how this album came to fruition. For me, Alexia, picking these tunes, I could just imagine, the nostalgia that people had when listening to your rendition of this music. Music evokes those feelings and those memories from the past, and, your twist, your interpretation of that really had to bring some people back, back in time, but bring them forward here in the present to feel those feelings again. And that's really something, that I miss on those earlier conversations. So I'm freaking genuinely excited to go back and do my mixing and matching and, maybe try to hear what Scotty heard when he first experienced, the old school versions and the interpretations that you guys put together. I'm freaking excited, guys. I really am. I really am.
Amazing. Another quick story here. Huh?
So you have to do that with a bottle of wine, baby.
Yeah. Or a bottle of cachaça.
I don't know if I'm that classy, but
Pinga. Pinga, we need a pingua.
But something really cool that happened was when Banho de Cheiro came out, which is the first single, the one with Roberta Sá that we saw the video. When that was released, the song was written by Carlos Fernando, who's a very, he's passed, but he was a very traditional frevo composer from Bahia. And his daughter sent me an email, on my website, she reached out to me and told me how incredibly moved she was to hear this version and what we did with it. And she was beyond excited. It was so cool. And she said that her dad's dream was to always see frevo reach New York. That was his biggest dream. Frevo is the musical style of the original composition. And in a way, we kind of made that happen for him. So she was so excited. So that was a really cool story, really really cool feedback, going back to what you were saying just about, how it could have touched people and who knew the songs. So to hear this from the composer's daughter was pretty mind blowing. That was really cool.
That's exactly what I'm speaking to. Thus the memories that it brings, and it's the first time I'm hearing that story too. I mean, there's a lot of more incidences that you haven't shared that goes along that line, Alexia. That's absolutely phenomenal. I want to bring it back. Again, thanks you guys so much for being here. I want to bring it back to the virtual room, the Ropeadope Lounge. Louis, can you hear me?
Houston?
I got you. I can hear you. Houston, we have a problem. So I think I have figured out the audio problem, and we're going to go out with some music.
Okay.
But I want to personally invite everyone here back. There are many more discussions to be had about Brazil, about Brazilian music, about Brazilian culture. And we want this space to continue to be a cultural center, as I've referenced a couple of times, for people to learn and hear. And, as it's broadcasting out on a live stream and also here in the room, it's a great space to do that. So I hope you all come back, and I want to thank you all for being here. I'm going to have to go chat with my friend over here for a little bit, and then I'm going to jump back on the Zoom in a bit. But thanks everyone, and
Thank
we
you.
hope we'll see you again.
Thank
you for having us. Great to meet you guys.
Yes.
Great to meet you, Kaya.
Pleasure.
And we'll be back. I'll be back.
Sending hearts to them. Sending hearts.
Thank you all so much. Such a pleasure.
Obrigado.
Take care, everybody. Yeah.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys.
Pinga soon to have the pinga.
Pinga soon. Very soon.
I wish I knew what that meant.